What if, in the middle of traffic, you saw the past you swore you had left behind, sitting at a bus stop with 3 children who wore your face? Sometimes destiny doesn't knock on your door. It crosses the street, looks you straight in the eye, and asks, are you going to run away again, or are you finally going to stay? This is a story about irreversible mistakes, about a love that rises again from the wreckage of pride, and about 3 little hearts who turn a broken man into something he never knew. He could be a father. Get ready to feel, to rethink, and to believe that sometimes forgiveness is the first step toward finding what truly matters. Anthony came home that night feeling like he had lead in his bones. The luxurious Beverly Hills apartment, silent and pristine, no longer felt like a symbol of success, but a cold echo of wrong turns. The glass walls reflected the city lights below, but he couldn't see any of it. He felt like he was drowning in a darkness thicker than any night. The image of the 3 little boys wouldn't leave his mind. It was like a broken mirror showing him pieces of his own past. The way one of them gripped the juice box with his left hand, exactly how Anthony used to when he was a kid. The way another furrowed his brow, like the world was too big and complicated to figure out. And the youngest, there was something in that fearless spontaneity that hurt in ways he couldn't explain. How could he not have known? He paced around the apartment, pulled off his suit jacket, unbuttoned his shirt, but still couldn't breathe. How had he let this happen? He remembered the last time he'd heard Sophia's voice, years ago. She had called over and over. Then came a message, I need to tell you something. It's important. But back then, Anthony had already been neck-deep in building the empire that now felt so hollow. His assistant filtered everything, calls, emails, people. A shield he had ordered himself. And that same shield had shut out the one thing that truly mattered. The next day, at exactly 3 p.m., Anthony arrived early at Griffith Park. He wore dark jeans and a plain black t-shirt, something casual, rare for him. He sat on a wooden bench beneath a tall tree, his hands trembling, breath uneven. The park was alive with families, children laughing, the distant sound of an ice cream cart bell. But to Anthony it was all a blur. When Sophia appeared, pushing a stroller where Dylan sat resting, Anthony stood up like he was facing something sacred. She stopped a few steps away. She looked simple as always, cotton pants, a light grey t-shirt, her hair pulled into a bun. And still, she carried a presence that completely disarmed him. You came, she said. Of course I did. A brief silence fell between them. Sophia helped Dylan out of the stroller and onto the grass, where he pulled a toy from his pocket and started playing on his own. They're your sons, Anthony, she said directly. Triplets. He swallowed hard. The word felt enormous. I can't believe it. Why didn't you? I tried. Many times, she cut in. But you blocked me. Your assistant told me you were moving on. Then my emails bounced back. I called from different numbers. I even went to your company's front desk. Anthony felt a knot rise in his throat. You went there? Yes, 4 months pregnant, with triplets. The security guard wouldn't even let me in. I stood outside for almost 2 hours. After that, I got the message. He dropped his head. The shame was crushing. I'm so sorry, Sophia. I don't even know where to begin. You don't need to start with me, she said firmly. They're what matters now. Anthony looked at Dylan, carefully stacking little stones in a pile. Do they know about me? No. They know they have a dad, but I never gave them a name. I didn't want to build false hopes. Do they have names? Of course they do, she answered, a touch of irony in her voice. Ryan, Liam, and Dylan. Dylan's the youngest, and the one with the most delicate heart. Anthony's expression tightened. What do you mean, delicate? Sophia took a deep breath and looked up at the sky for a moment before meeting his eyes again. He was born with a congenital heart condition. It's not severe, but it requires constant care, medication, checkups. He's already had 2 minor surgeries. That's why I had to learn to be strong, because I couldn't afford to fall apart. Anthony brought a hand to his face, trying to hide the horror he felt inside. All of that, while he was off at galas, launching products, flying private. She had been fighting alone, You should have tried harder, he whispered, voice cracking. You should have left space for me to exist, she replied. I knocked on doors, you were the one who locked. The silence that followed wasn't angry anymore. It was heavy, full of truths that couldn't be undone. They both knew there was no way to rewind time. Can I meet them? He asked. Like, as a friend, maybe? Sophia looked at him for a long time. The weight of that question felt bigger than any boardroom negotiation Anthony had ever faced. She wasn't just weighing the request, she was measuring his heart. Maybe, she said at last, but you're going to have to earn it. He nodded, eyes brimming. He had never heard words so hard and so fair. Sophia crouched and called Dylan, who ran toward her with a crooked smile. Dylan, this is Anthony. He's an old friend of Mummy's. Dylan looked up at him curiously, his blue eyes shining with the same intensity Anthony's had at 5 years old. Hi, the boy said simply, holding out his hand. Anthony kneeled down to meet him at eye level. He shook the small hand gently, like he was touching a miracle. Hi, Dylan, it's such a pleasure to meet you. Dylan smiled, and in that moment, Anthony's heart finally shattered completely. The sun was still high when Sophia and Anthony met again at Griffith Park the following weekend. The afternoon carried the fresh scent of freshly cut grass and the muffled sound of children playing in the distance. They had agreed to meet again, this time without the boys, so they could talk calmly, without interruptions or watchful little eyes. Sophia arrived alone, holding a water bottle and a small backpack. She wore a simple cotton dress, worn sandals, and a necklace with a leaf-shaped pendant, the same one she used to wear back when Anthony first met her. Years ago, before the success, before the vanity that came with millions, Anthony was already waiting under a wide canopied tree, sitting on a blanket he had laid out. He had brought fruit, 2 paper cups of coffee, and a nervousness he couldn't quite hide. He stood the moment he saw her. Thanks for coming, he said, trying to smile. Sophia gave a short nod and sat down slowly beside him. There was no intimacy in the gesture, only tolerance. But there was no rejection either, and that was more than he had dared to hope for just days ago. For a moment they sat in silence, the kind of silence that carries more weight than 1,000 words. Sophia watched a colorful kite dancing in the sky. Anthony watched the way she breathed, as if she was still carrying the weight of everything alone. I didn't even know where to begin, he said at last. These past few days, they've been the hardest of my life. I feel like I've been waking up from a deep sleep. And the more I wake up, the more I see what I missed. Sophia didn't reply right away. She picked a grape from the bowl between them, as if buying time with the gesture. You didn't lose everything, Anthony. But you also can't just show up and expect to get everything back in one conversation. I know, he said. That's why I'm here. Not to fix everything at once, but to understand. She looked at him for the first time since sitting down. Her eyes were steady but not cold. Do you really want to understand? He nodded. Then listen, and she began to speak. She told him about the months of pregnancy, the shock of finding out it was triplets and that she was completely alone. She told him about the sleepless nights, the bills piling up, the constant fear of not being able to feed 3 babies, about the temporary jobs, and the childhood friend who lent her a small room in the back of her house. How breastfeeding 3 newborns felt like a survival war. How Dylan had needed special care from the very beginning. I didn't have luxury, Anthony. No nanny, no fancy crib, no private insurance. All I had was me, and no matter how exhausted I was, I never stopped. She sighed and turned her gaze to the leaves dancing in the wind. I hated you. Then I just missed you. Then I just wanted to forget. And then I learned to live without you. Her words cut deep, but Anthony didn't reply. He simply lowered his head. And the boys? What was it like for them to grow up not knowing who I was? They're happy, she replied. They've never lacked love. But they always asked why they didn't have a dad. I made up stories. Said he was traveling, that he was a good man just far away. I never lied to protect them from you. I lied to protect them from the pain of being rejected. Anthony felt a tear threaten to fall, but took a deep breath. Do you hate me? He asked. I used to, she said simply. Now I just protect myself. They fell silent again. The sky above the park looked like a mirror, open, deep, and merciless. "I wish I had been there," he said. "I wish I had held your hand at the appointments, seen the first smile, heard one of them say Daddy for the first time." "You could have been," she said without bitterness. "I was an idiot. I thought you were trying to trap me with a baby. I never imagined this. Triplets aren't a trap, Anthony. They're a miracle." He smiled, pain written all over his face. "I see that now. Each of them feels like a missing piece of me." Sophia looked at him with more softness than she had the entire conversation. "And what do you want from them now?" "I want to know them, as a friend, as a father, as a man who needs to make peace with everything he did wrong." Sophia rested her arms on her knees, thoughtful. "Ryan's the oldest by 3 minutes. He thinks that makes him the boss. He's serious, responsible, protective of his brothers. Liam is the most sensitive. He feels everything, even the things no one says. Sometimes he pulls away, afraid of being left behind. Dylan is pure light. Even with his health problems, he's the most adventurous. He believes anything is possible." Anthony smiled, eyes glistening. "I'd love to meet them, even if just as that special friend you mentioned." Sophia nodded slowly. "They liked you, you know. Dylan said you have hero hands." Anthony laughed, surprised and moved. "Do you think I could take them out for ice cream one day?" "If they want to, yes." The silence that followed felt different now. It wasn't heavy with pain or tension. It held possibility. "Thank you for not running away," Sophia said quietly. "Thank you for letting me come back," he replied sincerely. She stood, grabbed her backpack and got ready to leave. Anthony rose too, but didn't try to hug her. "See you soon," she said. "See you soon," he echoed, hope flickering in his eyes. And for the first time in a long while, the sky above Anthony didn't look quite so grey. The invitation came simply, like everything Sophia did. A message on his phone with a date, time and place. Sunday, 3 p.m., Parkside Ice Cream Shop. They don't know yet. No emojis, no promises. Just the opportunity Anthony had been hoping for. The first real step toward meeting his children. He arrived 15 minutes early. The ice cream shop sat on a corner, charming, with red and white striped awnings. There were small tables outside and a sweet smell of waffle cones and chocolate drifting in the air. Dressed casually in a light blue shirt and clean sneakers, Anthony sat at a side table, perfectly positioned to watch for them. His heart beat faster than in any boardroom meeting. He could buy companies, face down shareholders, speak to hundreds. But now, standing before 3 little boys who still didn't know who he really was, everything felt new, terrifying. Moments later, Sophia appeared with the boys orbiting her like stars around their sun. Ryan walked beside her holding a book. Liam stayed close, clutching the edge of her shirt. Dylan ran a little ahead, buzzing with excitement over picking his favorite flavor. Anthony stood up. Sophia gave a subtle nod and, with a small gesture, guided the boys toward the table. They arrived smiling, energetic, completely unaware that the man in front of them was more than just a special friend. "Hi, Anthony," Sophia said lightly. "These are the boys." "Boys, this is Anthony. He's having ice cream with us today." Ryan looked at him first. His gaze was serious, suspicious, as if he already sensed there was more going on. "Are you Mommy's friend?" he asked directly. "Yes, an old friend," Anthony answered, smiling. "Do you have kids?" Liam asked next, curious but shy. Anthony hesitated for a split second. "No, but I'd really like to get to know you guys better, if that's okay." Dylan pulled out a chair and sat down, already decided. "If you buy me strawberry ice cream with marshmallows, you can be our friend." The laughter came naturally. Sophia laughed, the boys laughed, and Anthony felt something he hadn't in years, ease. They walked into the shop together. Dylan ran to the glass case like it was a theme park. Ryan studied the flavors like a judge. Liam held his mother's hand, but peeked at Anthony with growing curiosity. He watched them in wonder. Ryan asked for 2 flavors, in separate cups. "If I don't like one, I still have the other," he explained, methodical. Liam picked the same as his big brother. "Just to be safe," he whispered. And Dylan? He wanted everything. Strawberry ice cream, marshmallows, gummy bears, and a little caramel drizzle on top. "It's going to be way too sweet," Sophia warned. "Sweet is good," he declared proudly. Anthony offered to pay. When the server asked if it was all together, he smiled and replied, "Yes, they're all with me." Back at the table, the boys talked non-stop, mouths sticky with melting ice cream, cheeks smeared with sugar. Anthony just listened, soaking in the sound of their voices. "Have you ever been to a water park?" Dylan asked. "Yes, I have." "Do you have a real car?" Ryan asked, skeptical. "I do, but sometimes I ride a bike." "I can't ride without training wheels yet," Liam confessed softly. "If you want, I can teach you someday." Liam looked to his mother for permission. Sophia smiled and nodded. The afternoon passed in a strange rhythm. Time felt suspended in that small world made of ice cream, childhood questions, and laughter. But Anthony also noticed the silent details. The way Liam looked at him with cautious interest, how Ryan already seemed to want to protect the group, the spark in Dylan's eyes that never dimmed. At one point, Sophia stepped away to take a phone call across the street. The boys stayed distracted, but Anthony felt the weight of the moment. It was the first time he was alone with them. Ryan spoke first. "Do you really like Mommy?" Anthony looked him in the eye. "Yes, a lot. And I regret not being around for her before. Sometimes she was sad," Liam said quietly. "We saw it, even when she smiled." Anthony swallowed hard. "I was sad too. For not knowing, for missing all that time with you." And then Dylan said, "As only a child can, you look like my favorite hero. Captain Blue, but without the cape." Anthony smiled. "Maybe I need a cape now." "You don't," Dylan replied. "You already have our ice cream." When Sophia returned, she saw the four of them laughing together. She stood there for a moment, watching quietly. It was the first time she'd ever seen her boys that way, with someone who wasn't her, or her childhood friend who had helped raise them. And there was something there, a lightness in the air, an invisible thread of affection beginning to form, still fragile, still new, but real. As the afternoon came to an end, the boys said goodbye with shy hugs, except Dylan, who planted a loud kiss on Anthony's cheek and asked, "Will you come back another day?" Anthony nodded. "As many days as you want." On the drive home, Sophia listened to the boys chatter non-stop about the cool guy. Liam, always the quiet one, whispered, "He smells like a dad." Sophia glanced in the rearview mirror, swallowing hard. She knew that something had shifted that Sunday. She just didn't know what tomorrow would bring. As for Anthony, he drove home with a strange warmth in his chest. It wasn't just joy or just regret. It was something deeper, the beginning of a connection with everything. He had been denied for years, and that was now, slowly being returned. But deep down, he knew this was only the first test. The reunion was just the beginning. Trust would come next, and with it the hardest challenge of all, proving, day by day, that he was more than the man who left, that he could become the father who stayed. From that Sunday on, Anthony began to reorganize his life, or maybe, for the first time, to actually build one. He worked out a schedule with Sophia, respecting her pace, the kids' routines, and the natural layer of caution that still lingered between them. The visits started slowly, an afternoon at the park, a morning at the zoo, a snack after school. With each moment, Anthony watched, learned, and discovered himself reflected in those three little mirrors of who he used to be. At first, he tried to impress them with expensive toys, VIP tickets, imported sweets. But it didn't take long to realize what really mattered were the simplest things. Running barefoot in the sand, making sandwiches with ingredients they picked themselves, drawing pictures together at the kitchen table. It was Liam who moved him the most. The boy always approached cautiously, watching before acting, asking for permission with his eyes. Anthony noticed that a raised voice or a sudden movement was enough to make him retreat. It was as if Liam had learned too early how to avoid conflict. Ryan, on the other hand, was the structure. He needed to be in control. He reminded everyone when it was time to go, made sure his brother brought a jacket, and checked if Anthony had really read the bedtime story he promised. Sometimes Anthony felt like he was talking to a smaller, more serious version of himself, only more mature than any child should have to be. And then there was Dylan. Oh, Dylan, the child in a hurry to live everything. He ran, fell, got up again. He asked strange questions in the middle of lunch, Like, does the sky ever get tired of being the sky? Or if we stop thinking, does the thought die? He had a restless soul and a heart that needed constant care. Sophia always packed his backpack full of medications and instructions, and Anthony followed every one of them with absolute discipline. But not every day was picture perfect. The third time they were together, Dylan had a mild health episode during a walk. He sat down on the grass and said quietly, "My heart feels weird, Daddy." The words slipped out naturally and froze Anthony's entire world for a second. He dropped to his knees beside him, grabbed the backpack, found the medication, and followed the laminated instructions Sophia had left. He called a cab, cancelled the rest of the day, and brought Dylan straight home. When he placed the boy into Sophia's arms, he was shaking. For the first time, he truly understood what it meant to be present. It wasn't just about making them laugh. It was knowing what to do when the laughter stopped. After that day, Anthony changed everything. He started going to pediatric appointments with Sophia, attended school meetings, asked questions, researched heart conditions, bought a notebook and filled it with every detail about the boys, their favorite ice cream flavors, allergies, vaccine dates. The notebook became a kind of secret journal, someone trying to learn how to be a father after 5 years of absence. But it wasn't just his relationship with the boys that was changing. At night, Anthony would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, rethinking everything. The business awards, the magazine features, the champagne toasts at gala dinners. None of it felt as meaningful as the simple, "Thank you," Liam whispered after. Anthony tied his shoes without asking. He also began to see Sophia differently, not through the eyes of someone who had once loved and lost her, but as someone finally recognizing the quiet strength she carried. She was practical, direct, and even in difficult conversations, she stayed calm. She didn't expect anything from him. And maybe that was why he wanted to give her everything. Anthony tried not to show too much, but it was impossible to hide. When Sophia talked about the boys, he listened like it was the only voice in the world. When she smiled with pride about small victories, like Dylan drawing a nearly symmetrical heart, he smiled too, inside and out. Still, a part of him was afraid he wouldn't be enough, afraid it was too late, afraid the boys would pull away once they knew the truth, because up until that point, Anthony was still just the special friend. Sophia thought it was best that way. "They're getting attached," she had said, "but they need stability before they learn the truth." And Anthony understood. But it hurt. It was during a conversation with his business partner, James, that Anthony realized just how much his life had changed. "You've been off the grid. Tony, the board's getting impatient. You need to refocus on the company," James said over the phone. "My priority now is 3 boys and a heart that needs care." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe I built the right company, but the wrong life." On the other end, silence was James's only reply. Anthony began pulling back from the office, started working from home, turned his old private office into a playroom, replaced expensive suits in his closet with bins full of Legos, remodeled the kitchen so they could cook together, removed the automation systems that made everything feel cold and impersonal. Slowly, his apartment became a home, but still a quiet one, on the nights the boys returned to Sophia's house. And on those nights, Anthony would find himself staring at the empty booster seats, the drawings taped to the fridge, the dirty footprints he didn't want to clean up. And he would think about what was still to come. One night, flipping through his notebook of notes about the boys, Anthony decided to do something more. He hired a private investigator, not to spy on Sophia, but to understand how she had lived these past years. And the report, delivered 2 days later, hit like a punch to the gut. Sophia had never been in another serious relationship. She worked 3 different jobs, all beneath her qualifications, spent nights without electricity when bills couldn't be paid, relied on one friend, Amanda, a nanny, who shared the load, and through it all she never asked for help. Anthony closed the file with tears in his eyes. He was looking at a woman who had done what he never had, loved unconditionally. It was then that he realized being present wasn't enough. He had to earn the right to stay. The beginning of April brought More than flowers to the public gardens of Los Angeles. It also brought an unexpected letter that would leave Anthony frozen and shift the course of everything he believed he was starting to rebuild. It was a normal morning. Sunlight filtered through the curtains in Sophia's apartment as she folded the boys' clothes after breakfast. Liam was drawing on the rug. Ryan read a book about dinosaurs. And Dylan stacked pillows like building blocks. Her phone buzzed with a notification. She checked it casually, expecting a message from Amanda or the school group chat. But when she opened the email, her body froze. Formal job offer, international division. That was the subject line. It was from the organization she'd interviewed with remotely weeks ago, more out of curiosity than real hope. An international educational nonprofit, headquartered in Lisbon, Portugal, had approved her for a position as the academic coordinator of a new bilingual social project. Triple the salary she made now, full benefits, a home near the campus, and free childcare for all 3 boys. The email felt like a direct answer to every silent prayer Sophia had whispered over the years. But the first thing she felt wasn't joy. It was panic. She read and reread the message, said nothing to the boys. Instead, she went to the kitchen and called Amanda. "You won't believe this," she whispered, locking herself in the laundry room. The next day, she told Anthony, they met at a cafe near the park, where he often took the boys. Sophia arrived more serious than usual, holding a thin folder. Sensing the mood, Anthony didn't try to break the tension with small talk. "I got a job offer," she said plainly. His eyes widened slightly, trying to gauge the meaning. "It's an amazing opportunity. In Lisbon." The name hit like a stone. "Lisbon? Portugal?" She nodded, holding his gaze. "It's a social project for immigrant families, a place that values bilingual education, real inclusion, real impact. They offer everything: housing, school for the boys, healthcare, stability." Anthony took a deep breath, trying to keep his composure. "And are you going to accept?" "I haven't decided yet," she said, "but I'm considering it." He leaned forward, as if trying to physically stop her from moving on. "Sophia, what about the boys? What about us?" "They would come with me," she said carefully. "Of course we'd stay in touch, video calls, visits on holidays. But their lives would be there." Anthony's world began to collapse. All the small wins of the past few months, every laugh, every drawing, every bedtime story, were being swallowed by a silent whirlwind. "You're telling me you're taking them away from me?" "I'm not taking anyone from anyone. I'm thinking about their future. You know how hard it is to raise 3 kids alone here. This changes everything." "Changes for who?" Sophia stared at him, serious. "For me, for them, maybe even for you, if you're willing to see it clearly." He stood up, pushing his chair back slightly like he needed more air. "You can't do this to me." "You did this to me for 6 years," she replied, not angry, just honest. Anthony stepped back, feeling the pressure build in his chest. But guilt wouldn't work now. He needed more than promises. He needed a plan. "They like me. You know that. We're building something." "Yes, but legally, Anthony, you have nothing. No documents, no rights. If I decide to go, I go." The word stung, because they were true. He looked down. The silence between them was thick. Then, with a voice barely holding together, Anthony said, What if you went first? To get settled. And they stayed with me? For a month, maybe 2, just until you're set. Then we decide together." Sophia blinked. The offer surprised even Anthony himself. But it was out now. "You want to keep them with you?" "Yes. I've rebuilt my life for them. I turned my apartment into their home. I've memorized every medication. I'm part of their routine. I can do this." She hesitated. She hadn't expected that. "And work? Your company? It'll survive without me. For the first time, I understand what really matters." Sophia crossed her arms, caught between distrust and hope. "It's risky. You don't have experience. But I have the will. And the love." She took a deep breath, processing it all. He wasn't the man who left years ago. But still, could she leave her children? "Would you let me call every day? Let them video chat whenever they want? Leave written instructions? Have Amanda check in weekly?" "Yes, absolutely, yes." Sophia studied him in silence. Then she took a sip from her coffee. finishing it in one gulp, and said, "Then let's talk to a judge." Anthony looked at her, stunned. "If I really take this job," she continued, "I want to do everything right, officially, legally. You want a chance to be their father? It starts now." That night, Anthony didn't sleep. He reread every page of his notebook, called his lawyer, started researching temporary custody, and cried alone in the bathroom, trying not to make a sound. Across the city, Sophia was also awake. The boys were asleep, Dylan with his hand resting over his chest, guarding his heart, and she, in the dark, held the job offer letter, imagining two possible futures, one where she fought alone again, and one where she dared to trust. The next day, the boys heard the news. "Are we moving to another country?" Ryan asked, frowning. "It's just an idea," Sophia said. "But for now, you'd stay with Anthony for a while." Liam stayed quiet. Dylan, on the other hand, lit up. "Really? It'll be like camping with him?" Sophia smiled nervously. "Something like that." Liam looked at her, then at Anthony, who stood nearby trying to look calm. "You'll come get us later, right?" "Of course," Sophia said, kneeling beside him. "Always. I'll never leave you alone." Liam thought for a few seconds and said, "Then I want to stay with the special friend." Sophia looked at Anthony. There was acceptance in her son's eyes, and a door opening, but nothing had been decided yet. And between Lisbon and Los Angeles, between fear and hope, their story was still being written. The custody hearing was scheduled for a grey Tuesday at the Los Angeles family court. The overcast sky seemed to mirror the tension between Anthony and Sophia, even though both tried to maintain a calm front in front of the boys. Everything had happened so quickly, almost surreal. Sophia's job offer in Portugal, the brave decision to leave the kids with Anthony for a while, and all the legal bureaucracy needed to make it official and safe. The judge assigned to the case, the Honorable Marcus Blakely, was known for his technical rigor, but also for his sensitivity in family transition cases. The courtroom was cold and functional, with pale wooden walls and dark leather chairs. Nothing about it was welcoming except perhaps the way Sophia gently squeezed Liam's hand before he left with Amanda to the waiting room next door, where the three boys would be looked after while the adults discussed their future. Anthony was nervous, even with his experienced lawyer by his side. He had never stepped into a courtroom for something this personal. Business cases, many, mergers, acquisitions, labor disputes. But now he wasn't a CEO. He was a man trying to recover lost time. Sophia spoke quietly with her own lawyer. She looked calm, but there was a strength in her posture. She was no longer the young woman he had met years ago, unsure in the shadow of his success. She was a woman who wore the weight of hard choices in her eyes, nights without sleep, years of doing everything alone, and who now bravely had chosen to trust. When the hearing began, the judge read the request in a solemn tone. Request for temporary joint custody with physical residence granted exclusively to the biological father, Mr. Anthony Collins. During the mother's professional transition period in Portugal, the arguments were presented. Sophia's history, the evidence of her dedication as a mother, the private investigator's report, which Anthony chose to share, highlighting the absence of unstable relationships, a life centered entirely around her children, and her emotional capacity to raise them. Then Anthony's attorney spoke, outlining his recent transformation, the restructured routine, the apartment renovations to welcome the kids, Dylan's medical care, his consistent involvement over the past few months. Finally, Sophia stood and asked to speak. "Your Honor," she began, her voice steady. "It's not easy for a mother to decide to leave her children, even if just for a few weeks. But I believe this can be good for all of us. They need to know their father. They need to see that they can trust him. And I need to accept this opportunity to secure a better future." The judge listened carefully, then turned to Anthony. "Mr. Collins, do you understand that this custody is temporary? That there is a scheduled review?" "I understand, Your Honor, and I'm here not to take anything from them, but to add to their lives." The silence that followed was heavy, but not hostile. The judge made some notes, adjusted his glasses, and finally said, considering the immediate well-being of the minors, the mother's history, and the father's recent demonstration of active involvement. They grant temporary custody for 3 months to Mr. Collins, with full and unrestricted communication rights for the mother, and a scheduled reassessment at the end of the period. The decision, spoken calmly, struck like a silent lightning bolt. It was official. Outside the courtroom, Sophia walked to the children with steady steps. Though inside she was breaking apart, she hugged each of them tightly, as if imprinting their scent, their warmth, the texture of their bodies, grown against her chest, into her soul. Amanda stood beside her, emotional, holding backpacks filled with clothes, toys, and medications. Anthony approached, eyes wet, trying to be the steady harbor he now needed to be. "It's going to be okay," he told Sophia. "It's going to be hard," she replied. "I want the hard, all of it." Sophia swallowed hard and crouched down in front of the boys. "Sweethearts, you'll be staying with Anthony for a while, remember? He's got everything ready. It's going to be fun, and I'll call every day, send videos, tell stories." "Okay," Liam nodded, still clutching his teddy bear. Brian Sirius took Dylan's hand. "If he forgets Dylan's medicine, I'll remind him," he said firmly. Sophia smiled through tears. "I know you will." That evening, Anthony took the boys to his apartment for the first time as their legal guardian. The car ride was quiet at first. The 3 of them were tired, a bit confused but not afraid. When they arrived at the parking garage, their eyes lit up. "You live here?" Dylan asked. "I do," Anthony said. "But now, it's your home too." The apartment felt completely different. Renovations had just been completed. Days earlier, a shared bedroom for Ryan and Liam, with custom bunk beds, book nooks, wall decals, and low shelves they could reach on their own. Dylan's room was special: floor cushions, blackout curtains, sensory toys, and a reading chair. The kitchen had child-sized chairs, colorful magnets on the fridge, a low shelf with plastic cups and plates. There was even a whiteboard with their weekly schedule written in different colors. "Wow," Ryan whispered. "You have Netflix and Disney?" Dylan asked in awe. "Yep, and books." "Lots of books," Anthony said, pointing to the living room corner. Liam walked over to the couch silently, sat down with his teddy bear in his lap. Anthony approached slowly and sat beside him. "You okay?" Liam nodded but said nothing. He just rested his head on Anthony's shoulder. And in that small gesture, something opened inside Anthony. The first night wasn't perfect. Dylan threw a tantrum over his pajamas. Ryan asked to call their mom 3 times. Liam cried softly before falling asleep. But eventually they all drifted off, hugged, warm, safe. Anthony stayed up a little longer, sitting on the hallway floor, listening to their breathing. He didn't want to miss a single sound, a single sign of discomfort. For the first time, he wasn't in a rush to be anywhere else. There, in the stillness of 4 walls, he felt something entirely new, belonging. But across the ocean, Sophia hadn't left yet. The suitcase was packed, the documents ready, the flight booked. But her heart wasn't sure if it was going or staying. Meanwhile, Anthony knew the 3 months would pass quickly. Nothing was permanent yet, and now, more than ever, he would have to prove, day by day, that he wasn't just their special friend, he was their father. In his first week as guardian of the 3 boys, Anthony learned that no amount of luxury, success, or emotional intelligence could prepare him for life with small children. At 6 in the morning on the very first day, Dylan yelled from his room, "Who peed the bed?" The answer was Dylan himself, but that didn't stop him from pointing at Liam, who was still fast asleep. Ryan woke up grumpy, muttering that he needed quiet for his important dreams. And Anthony, still in his boxers, dark circles under his eyes, tripped over a plastic dinosaur on his way to check. The glamour of being a CEO evaporated like steam from the coffee maker. And yet, there was a new tenderness in all of it. After changing the sheets, bathing Dylan, convincing Liam to swap out his chocolate-stained pajamas, and helping Ryan find the least horrible outfit, Anthony made pancakes using a YouTube recipe. "Burn 2. Save the rest." The boys ate happily. Anthony, sipping cold coffee, watched them like someone witnessing a small, everyday miracle. At school, he had to deal with the principal, notes in the backpack, and Liam's teacher mentioning that he seemed more sensitive than usual. He also had to offer awkward explanations. "No, I'm not their uncle. Yes, they're staying with me for now. Yes, I know about Dylan's medication. It's all written down." By the end of the week, his office didn't even know how to reach him. Messages piled up. His assistant called every day, but Anthony just didn't pick up. There was more value in learning to braid Liam's hair, who secretly loved playing with his cousin's wigs, than in joining a morning investor call. Soon the days became a cycle of chaos and discovery. Dylan figured out how to unscrew the bathroom doorknob, just to see what it looked like inside. Ryan started a secret notebook to track Anthony's adult mistakes. Liam began writing tiny illustrated notes and leaving them around the apartment. "Today I felt happy. Thank you. Sorry for yelling. You're nice even when you look scared." Anthony kept every one of them. But there were invisible challenges too. Dylan started having nightmares, woke up sweaty, saying his heart was jumping too fast. Anthony learned to check his pulse, give the right dose of medicine, and sit beside him until he fell asleep again, usually with his tiny hand gripping his. Liam sometimes isolated himself, watching old videos of his mom on her phone. Anthony, noticing this, began recording short clips of their days and sending them to Sophia. She replied with videos from Lisbon, parks, pigeons, the Tejo River. The boys missed her, but began to understand that love still lived in connection, even across oceans. Ryan took on more responsibility than a 5-year-old should. Enforced routines, told everyone when it was bedtime, reminded Anthony about school meetings, and tracked Dylan's meds. "You don't have to be the adult all the time," Anthony told him one night. "But if I don't remember, who will?" Anthony knelt in front of him, held his shoulders, and replied, "I will. I promise." And he kept that promise. Slowly, the boys began to trust him, not with the excitement of a new toy, but with the quiet hope in something they never thought could exist, permanence. On their 3rd Sunday together, Anthony took them to an outdoor movie screening in the park. Blankets, popcorn, soft lights strung between trees. They watched an old film about a father reuniting with his child after years apart. Halfway through, Dylan fell asleep in his lap. Liam nodded off against his shoulder. Ryan stayed awake until the end, silent. On the drive home, the 2 younger boys slept in the back seat. Ryan whispered, "Will you still be here tomorrow?" Anthony took a moment to answer, fighting back the lump in his throat. "Yes, and the day after that. And the one after that?" Ryan didn't say anything, but he smiled, a smile free from tension, the first of its kind. Meanwhile, Sophia watched everything from afar and up close. The time difference was tough, but she made sure to call at the same hour every day. She sent videos reading bedtime stories, showing Lisbon's landscapes, asking about their days. Her new room still felt impersonal, but the children's drawings in picture frames brought it to life. The pain of being apart was deep, but there was also a new kind of trust, the trust in knowing her children were cared for. For the first time, she didn't see Anthony as an absence, but as a presence. Flawed, yes, but real. One day, after a video call where Dylan asked to see Portugal's sky, Sophia called Anthony privately. "You're doing well," she said. "It doesn't always feel that way." "But you are," she insisted. "They sound lighter. I hear it in their voices. They feel safe." Anthony stayed quiet for a long moment. "Thank you for giving me this chance." "You're making your chance, Anthony." I'd just left the door cracked open. That same day, while the boys made cupcakes in the kitchen, more flour on the floor than in the bowl, Anthony felt something he had never felt before. He didn't need validation, or applause, or headlines. He just needed to hear 3 little voices say, "Look what we made, Dad." "Dad." Liam said it for the first time after slipping and scraping his knee. He screamed out of instinct, "Dad!" And Anthony ran, knelt, cleaned the blood, kissed the scrape. And for the first time, he felt whole. But he knew the 3 months were flying by. The custody reassessment was coming. Sophia was settling in. Her contract in Lisbon was solid. The question was no longer whether he could care for his children, but whether he was willing to fight to keep doing it. even if it meant giving up the life he had built for years. That night, sitting in the living room while the boys slept on the couch, Anthony opened his phone. He looked at the photo of the four of them at the zoo, everyone smiling, genuinely no posing, and he knew. He no longer wanted a life without them. But what came next, the decision, the proposal, the future, was still unwritten. And he had to find the courage to ask himself, how far am I willing to go? For love? It was a cloudy afternoon when the question came, simple as a whisper, yet devastating as a storm. Dylan was sitting on the living room floor, legs crossed, flipping through a picture book about the human body. When he turned the page about the heart, he pointed at the image and asked, "Is that what my heart looks like?" Anthony, who was making hot chocolate in the kitchen, smiled and replied yes, and even braver than that. Dylan seemed to think for a moment. Then he looked up, those blue eyes, identical to Anthony's, and asked, "You're my dad, aren't you?" The world seemed to stop. There was no sound in the apartment at that moment, just the wind rustling gently through the curtains. Anthony walked over slowly, crouched down to the boy's level, and looked directly into those eyes full of innocence and instinct. "Yes, Dylan, I am." The boy didn't pull away. He didn't smile either. He just nodded, as if confirming something his heart had already known. Then why didn't anyone say that before? A knot formed in Anthony's throat. Because sometimes adults take a while to figure out how to say certain things. And I didn't want to confuse you guys. But it was never because I didn't love you. Dylan thought a bit more, then gave a sideways smile. "I already knew." "You did?" "You smell like a dad." The answer was so pure, so honest. Anthony had to hold back tears. Later that night, after dinner and baths, with all three boys in pajamas and the TV humming quietly in the background, Anthony found the courage to tell the other two. They sat together on the living room rug. Ryan brought his notebook. Liam, as always, carried his teddy bear. Dylan bounced excitedly between them until Anthony gently pulled him into his lap. "Boys, can I tell you something important?" They nodded, listening. "Remember how Mommy used to say that you had a dad who was far away? That he was a good person but couldn't be around back then?" Ryan was the first to react. "It's you, isn't it?" Anthony took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes, I'm your dad." Liam's eyes widened. He sat frozen, clutching his bear to his chest. Ryan slowly closed his notebook. "Why now?" he asked. "Because now I know I can really be with you. Because I want to. And because I should have been here from the start. But I made a mistake. One that hurt all of us. And I want to fix it if you'll let me." Liam said nothing. He just leaned his head on Anthony's shoulder like he had weeks earlier. But this time the gesture was more fragile, like he was testing to see if it was safe. Ryan was more cautious. "What if you leave again?" Anthony felt the weight of the question. "I won't, not anymore. But what if Mom comes back? Or you get tired of us?" "I don't get tired of the people I love." A long silence followed. Then Liam whispered, "So, can I call you Dad now?" Anthony cupped his face gently. "You can, if you want to." "Dad," Liam said like he was tasting the word for the first time. That night the boys slept in Anthony's room, all together. A pile of little bodies, big dreams, and quiet promises of a love that, though late, was growing deep roots. But the next day would bring the echoes of that truth. At school, Ryan answered his teacher's questions with more confidence. Dylan drew a tree with 4 people holding hands, and Liam wrote, in shaky letters at the corner of his homework page, "My dad came late, but he came." Anthony kept that page like a treasure. That weekend, the 4 of them made a video call to Sophia. It was Saturday morning in Los Angeles and late afternoon in Lisbon. Sophia answered from the garden of her new home, sitting on an iron chair, her hair up, her smile unable to hide the ache of longing. "Hi, my loves." The kids rushed in front of the screen, all talking at once. They told her about the drawing, the new game, the pancake Anthony had burned, and the movie they had watched together. And then Dylan said, "Dad told us." Sophia froze for a moment. Anthony, behind the boys, simply nodded. She took a deep breath, holding back her emotions. "And how do you feel about it?" Ryan answered first, confused. "But it's cool." Liam nodded silently. I knew it from the first day, Dylan declared, like he was guarding an ancient secret. Sophia laughed through tears. My sweetheart, I love you so much. Do you love Daddy too? Dylan asked. Anthony and Sophia exchanged a silent look through the screen. I love you three. And what matters most is that you're being loved. After the call ended, Anthony stared at the blank screen for a while. He couldn't explain what he was feeling. Relief, fear, gratitude, love. That night, while making dinner, Ryan came over holding his notebook. Can I read you something? Of course. Ryan opened to the middle page and read aloud. Slowly, Anthony was a man who made ice cream, pancakes and confused socks. Now he's our dad. He still confuses socks, but we forgive him because he listens and because he stays. I think being a dad is that staying. Anthony couldn't speak. He just pulled Ryan into a long, tight hug, and in that moment, he realized the serious-eyed boy in his arms was no longer a suspicious stranger. He was his son, but he also knew the love of the children wasn't the only thing that mattered. Soon it would be time to talk to Sophia, to make everything official, to decide whether forever was truly possible and how that would work. Between two continents, two worlds, and one simple truth, the boys now knew who he was, and there was no going back. The decision to introduce the boys to his parents wasn't made lightly. Anthony had delayed it as long as he could. He knew this wasn't just about introducing three charming kids to the Collins family. It was something more, owning his past, unlocking a door he himself had sealed, and facing the guilt that came with it. His parents lived in Santa Barbara, in a house with a wide garden, a lemon tree out back, and a porch where his mother, Eleanor, used to sew in the mornings. His father, Richard, a soft-spoken man with a sharp gaze, was a retired military officer and now obsessed with gardening and his mother's collection of English porcelain cups. When Anthony called to share the news, he was direct, uncharacteristically so. "Mom, are you sitting down?" "Now I am," she replied calmly, in the way only someone expecting something big would. "I have 3 children." A short silence. Then the inevitable question, how old? 5, they're triplets. A longer silence this time. "And are they Sophia's?" she asked, her voice careful, gentle. Anthony knew that was her version of restrained love. "Yes, I didn't know." "Not until a few months ago." Eleanor took a deep breath. "Then it's time to bring them. There are grandchildren, Anthony, and you don't need an invitation to meet your own family." And so, the following Saturday, Anthony packed bags, prepared snacks, gathered toys, and drove with the boys to Santa Barbara. It was just over an hour's drive, but it felt like a lifetime. Ryan was quiet, staring out the window. Liam slept with his bear in his arms. Dylan asked non-stop about the grandparents and whether the house had a pool. When they arrived, the scene waiting for them was almost cinematic. Eleanor stood at the door in a floral apron, her hands trembling slightly. Anthony got out first, but before he could open the back door, Dylan shot out of his seat like a spring. "This is Grandma's house?" Anthony smiled. "It is." Eleanor walked slowly toward him, knelt down, and opened her arms. Dylan ran straight into her embrace, like he had always belonged there. "You smell nice," he said, laughing. Eleanor cried without a sound. Ryan came out next, cautious, scanning everything like he was entering a foreign land. But when he saw Dylan so comfortable, and noticed the soft way Eleanor looked at them, he stepped forward and held out his hand. "Nice to meet you, ma'am. I'm Ryan, the oldest." She shook his hand firmly and replied, "You have your father's eyes, and your grandfather's posture." Liam came last, gripping his teddy tightly. He hesitated, eyes darting to the flower beds. But Eleanor didn't push. She simply opened her arms wider and said, "There's still room if you'd like it." Liam walked slowly and melted into the hug without a word. Inside, Richard waited on the porch, holding his teacup. "Anthony," he said, standing up, "took you long enough." "I know, Dad, but they're here now." "That's what matters." Ryan approached first, curious about his grandfather's stern air. Richard studied him like he did the young trees in his garden. "You're the one who watches over the others, right?" Ryan nodded, surprised. "Then come. I need help picking lemons. Good eyes always find the best fruit." As they walked off together, Liam wandered over to the porch table where some books were stacked. He ran his fingers over the cover of an old atlas. Richard turned to him gently. "Want to see where Portugal is?" Liam nodded. They opened the book together. Dylan, meanwhile, had found a rubber ball and was already sprinting across the yard, laughing loudly before collapsing in the grass. Eleanor wiped her eyes. "He laughs just like you did at 3, she whispered. Anthony stood next to her, unable to name the feeling inside. Pride, pain, relief, the realization that, somehow, despite everything, he had come home. Lunch was served in the backyard. Eleanor made lasagna, potato salad, and fresh lemonade from the garden. The boys devoured everything. Dylan had seconds. Richard taught Liam how to peel lemons with a small knife. Ryan asked about his time in the Navy. Between bites and laughter, Anthony nearly forgot all the time he'd lost. But memory lingered in the details. The chair he sat in as a child, the shelf of old trophies, the smell of the wooden house after lunch. The boys played with a wooden train set Richard had saved for years. Meanwhile, Anthony sat on the porch with his parents. "You've changed," Eleanor said, "because now I know what matters." "And what will you do?" "Fight to stay with them." Richard nodded quietly. "And their mother?" Eleanor asked. "She's in Portugal working. She trusts me now. But it's all still temporary. Soon, we'll have to decide the future." She took his hand. "You always chase the world, Anthony, but now the world is coming to you. Don't run." Anthony looked at the boys in the yard. He knew he couldn't. There was a new generation of Collins growing right there, and they deserved roots, not promises. At the end of the day, the boys hugged their grandparents tightly. Ryan borrowed a book from his grandfather. Liam picked a flower from the garden. Dylan left with lemon-stained clothes and a huge smile. "When can we come back?" he asked. "Soon," Anthony replied. "This is your home too now." On the way home, the silence was different. It wasn't exhaustion. It was peace. When they arrived, they found a package at the door, a box from Portugal, with each boy's name handwritten by Sophia. Inside were children's books in Portuguese, photos of their new school, and a letter for each of them. Anthony read them aloud. "My beloved sons, here where I am, there's also sky, also grass, also hugs. But none of them are as beautiful as you. I miss you every day, and I'm so happy to see you growing with courage and joy. I love you, Mommy." Liam held his letter to his chest. Ryan smiled with his eyes. Dylan asked if you could mail a hug. Anthony hugged them right there, in the entryway. Later, alone, he wrote a letter. He didn't know if he'd send it. But he wrote, "Mom, Dad, they've taught me more in 3 months than life ever taught me in 35 years. They taught me that love is persistence, that trust doesn't come from words, it comes from showing up, and that being a father isn't inherited, it's built." He still knew there was one step left. The document still said he was a temporary guardian, and the next step would make it official. But now, with his family growing around him, the path was steady, and deep down he understood blood is a beginning, but belonging is a choice. It was a sunny Friday morning when Sophia landed back in Los Angeles. Exactly 2 months had passed since she left the boys with Anthony, and although they spoke every day via video calls and messages, seeing each other in person again carried a different kind of weight. She stepped out of the taxi with a medium-sized suitcase, wearing a beige dress and flat sandals. Her hair was loose, slightly wavy. On her face, a blend of nervousness and peace. Anthony waited at the building entrance, hands in his pockets, heart racing. He had cleaned every corner of the apartment, placed fresh flowers on the table, and made pancakes with the boys, who were excited yet oddly quiet that day. As if, even without fully understanding what was coming, they sensed that something important was about to happen. When Sophia walked in, Liam was the first to run into her arms, wrapping himself around her waist. Ryan stayed a few steps behind, watching with the growing maturity he'd developed. Dylan screamed, "Mom!" as if she'd been gone for years, pulling her straight to the couch to show a drawing he'd made that morning. The 4 of them holding hands beneath a giant heart. Sophia sat on the floor with them, hugged all 3 at once, and simply cried in silence. Anthony watched from a distance, honoring the moment. Later, after Amanda took the boys to the park, Sophia and Anthony sat at the kitchen table. Her coffee cup was half full, his untouched. Between them a brown envelope. Inside, the documents prepared by her lawyer. "I've been thinking about this for weeks," she began. "And I'm sure you have too." "Every day," he replied. "The boys call you Dad. They know you are. They live with you. They trust you, but their birth certificates still have a blank space?" Anthony nodded. It wasn't just paperwork. It was a documented absence, an official void that clashed with the real, daily presence he had been building. "I want to put your name there," she said. "If you still want that." He didn't answer right away. He got up, walked to the bookshelf, and returned with the notebook where he recorded everything about the boys. He opened it to the first page and slid it across to her. Sophia read silently. Inside were notes about doctor's appointments, reactions to medications, things the boys had said, simple moments, like, "Dylan asked me to sleep next to him tonight. He said he had a thunderstorm dream. Ryan lost a tooth and didn't tell anyone. I only found out when I saw it under his pillow." And at the bottom of the last page, written in small letters, "I don't want to be a father only in my heart. I want to be their father on paper too." Sophia smiled through her tears. "Then let's do it together." At the Los Angeles Central Registry, the building was cold and impersonal. But Anthony didn't care. He had polished his shoes, worn a light blue shirt, the one the boys said matched his eyes, and brought copies of Liam's drawings, made especially for the occasion. Sophia, calm and focused, handled the documents with the precision of someone used to paperwork, but with the care of someone who understood what it all truly meant. The clerk called the parents forward. Anthony signed the documents one by one, hand trembling, as if signing a peace treaty with the universe. Sophia signed as well, and finally the woman stamped the 3 certificates. "It's official now," she said, handing them the papers. "Ryan Reed Collins. Liam Reed Collins. Dylan Reed Collins." Anthony held the papers like he was holding a newborn. Outside, the boys were waiting with Amanda in the square across the street. When they saw their parents, they ran to them. "So, we're Collins now?" Ryan asked. "You are," Anthony said, kneeling down. "Officially, on paper and in the heart." "That means we have the same name as you?" Liam asked, hugging him. "Yes, and that makes me the happiest man in the world." Dylan looked at his brothers and declared, "So now we're the Collins 3. And hand in hand, they sprinted toward the park. Sophia and Anthony sat on a bench, watching them from a distance. The sun was beginning to set, casting golden light over the trees and long shadows across the grass. "Thank you," Anthony said. "For what?" "For trusting me, for letting me make it right even when you didn't have to." Sophia looked at him. "You didn't fix it. You built it from scratch, and you did it barefoot on ground that doesn't forgive." Anthony smiled, a mix of sadness and gratitude. "So what now?" "Now we keep going," she said. "Maybe splitting time, maybe inventing a new kind of family, but with truth, with a name, with presence." Anthony looked at the boys. Dylan was climbing the slide like it was a mountain. Ryan helped Liam tie his shoes. It was such a simple scene, and yet it was everything. "They're the best thing I have," he said. "And you're the most surprising thing they've got." She didn't say it like a compliment. She said it like a fact. And Anthony understood. That night, the 4 of them returned together to the Santa Monica apartment. Sophia would stay over in the guest room, and the boys insisted they all eat dinner together, like a real family, Liam said. Anthony made pasta with tomato sauce. Sophia made a salad. Dylan tried to help with the tomatoes and made a mess. Ryan set the table, one plate at a time. Liam placed little notes under each napkin that read, "Now we're all Collins." "That's really cool." They ate surrounded by laughter, forks hitting the floor, requests for more juice, and stories from school. And for the first time, Sophia looked around and thought, maybe I don't have to choose between 2 worlds. Maybe love really does have the power to expand everything, even the impossible. Later, after the boys were asleep, Sophia stepped out onto the balcony with Anthony. The ocean murmured in the distance. The night breeze was soft. "Do you think we're ready?" she asked. Anthony looked at her tenderly. "No, but I don't think anyone ever is." And even so, we go anyway. She smiled. And in that moment, with no promises, no eternal vows, no fixed plans, they both understood that the most important part was already done. The names were on the paper, but the bonds were made in time, and time now belonged to all of them. The invitation was simple, written in colorful letters by small hands. You're invited to our 6th birthday party. Location, Daddy's house. There'll be cake, music, and a surprise. The paper was taped to the fridge, and Anthony read it every morning since the boys had made it together. It wasn't just an invitation, it was a symbol, a milestone, the first time they'd celebrate their birthday as Collins, in name, in heart, and on the front door of the house where they now belonged. Sophia had been back from Portugal for 2 weeks. She managed to adjust her role in the organization, and now split her time between Lisbon and LA in carefully planned cycles. During her time away, the boys had grown, not just in inches, but in confidence, identity, and laughter. When she returned, she found not only happy children, but a different Anthony, lighter, more whole, more present. On the Saturday of the party, the Santa Monica house felt alive. The walls were covered in blue, yellow, and green balloons scattered everywhere, in perfectly imperfect chaos. Liam had chosen the colors because, in his words, they were the friendliest. Framed pictures of the boys were propped around the room, at the zoo, at the beach. From the night they all fell asleep watching a dinosaur movie on the couch. Anthony had hired a caricature artist, but the kids were more excited about the bounce house and the inflatable slide in the backyard. Sophia manned the dessert table, adjusting the brigadeiros Dylan had been trying to steal since 9 a.m. Ryan, of course, was managing everything. Clipboard in hand, he checked off names and scolded adults who were late. Liam handed out dinosaur stickers to each guest. Dylan ran around with a paper crown shouting, "I'm king of the world today." Neighbors, school friends, family, and even Anthony's co-workers arrived. The house filled with laughter, aromas, and new memories. But 2 guests made the moment even more special, Eleanor and Richard, the grandparents. They came with a homemade lemon, cake topped with brown sugar glaze, and a gift, box big enough to fit 3 kids. When they arrived, Dylan screamed, "Grandma!" and jumped into her arms as if the party had only just begun. Anthony hugged his parents long and silently. Richard looked around and then into his son's eyes. "You've built something beautiful here." Anthony didn't respond, just held his father's hand for a few quiet seconds, and that was enough. The afternoon went on with games, laughter, messy dancing in the living room, and a surprise karaoke machine Sophia brought. Dylan sang a made-up song about ice cream and friendly monsters. Liam requested a Portuguese lullaby he learned from Sophia on a video call. Ryan, after much pleading, sang Imagine with such seriousness that it brought tears to many eyes. As the sun began to set, Anthony gathered everyone in the backyard. He stepped onto a small platform made of wooden planks and asked for silence. "I want to thank each person here today, not just for coming to celebrate this special day, but for being part of what is becoming our life." He looked at Sophia, at his sons, at his parents, and then took a deep breath. 6 years ago, 3 children were born, and I didn't know it. For many years, I didn't know what truly mattered. But today, every laugh, every broken toy, every fevered night or thunderstorm panic, each of those moments has taught me what love really is. He cleared his throat, holding back tears. These 3 boys, Ryan, Liam, and Dylan, have changed me, rebuilt me. And if I'm a better man today, it's because of them. And also because of the woman who never stopped being a giant of a mother, even when she had to do it all alone. Sophia looked down, smiling, quietly, honestly. Today they turned 6, but the truth is, I'm the one who was reborn. There was a pause, then applause, and then Dylan yelled, "Can we cut the cake now?" Everyone laughed. The cake had 3 layers, 1 for each boy. Dinosaurs, robots, and stars. 3 candles were lit. The boys stood side by side and closed their eyes. "Make a wish," Anthony whispered. "I already got mine," Liam said softly. After the cake, while the kids ran around the yard, Sophia and Anthony sat on the porch, watching the sunset. The sky turned orange and purple, and the ocean hummed like an old lullaby. "They're happy," she said. "And you?" She thought for a while, then answered, "Yes, for the first time in a long time, I feel whole." Anthony looked at her. "I don't know what the future holds, Sophia. If you'll want to stay here, if you'll want them with you more often, if we'll be able to share this without hurting each other. But what I do know is, I'll never walk away again." She held his hand, a small gesture, but firm, and full of meaning. "We don't have to figure it all out now. Just keep walking." That night, with the boys asleep, scattered across the living room like little soldiers after a joyful battle, Anthony turned off the lights and stood still, watching them. Ryan slept with his planner on his lap. Liam clutched his bear, one of his notes stuck to his forehead with tape. Dylan, crownless but still wearing the face of a proud king, snored softly. Anthony walked over, sat on the floor, and rested his head on Liam's knees. He closed his eyes, and in that perfect stillness, between scattered toys, forgotten cups, and freshly made memories, he finally understood this was his life. Not perfect, not easy, but full. Because in that home, on that Saturday, there was something no amount of money could ever buy, a family stitched together by love, forgiveness, rebuilding, and new beginnings. And as the breeze of early morning drifted in through the open windows, Anthony knew he would never feel alone again, because he was no longer just Anthony Collins, CEO. He was a father, and the sleepy smiles around him were all the reason he needed to keep being one. In the end, it wasn't the certificates, or the last names, or even the parties that defined what it meant to be a dad. It was the silence shared in the middle of the night. It was the fear faced together. It was the daily choice to stay, even when leaving would be easier. Anthony arrived late, but he arrived. And in life, sometimes, the presence that once seemed lost can be found again when we have the courage to return and the humility to rebuild. If this story moved you, leave a like, subscribe, and share it with someone special. And tell me, where are you listening from? Your support is what keeps this channel alive.